to what we've already given up. It's like we're pacing around the obvious. Separate lives, different stories, 2 out of 4 of us are all fed up. Well, you and I play with fire, but don't say nothing, or we're both busted. We'll get what's coming after you. No, don't say nothing, or bon voyage to rendezvous. Trade fights for better views. We both need something new. Maybe we should just tell them. I should've forgave somebody. So long to rendezvous. So long to.
Hello, hive-minded readers, and welcome to the Books and the Bees podcast. Just like bees play a crucial role in pollinating flowers and sustaining life, books pollinate minds and nurture the soul. We see the connection between the two, the delicate dance of ideas, and of stories that enrich our lives.
I'm Cody.
I'm Haley.
Welcome to our podcast.
Hello.
Hey, Haley, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. It's almost the end of February already.
Yeah, I know. It's flying again.
It needs to slow down.
It really does. I'm kind of over this whole years flying by and a blink, you know.
Me too.
I miss the days of each month feeling like it takes forever. So.
Yes. Yeah. It has been a crazy fast month and so much going on. I'm just ready for, I don't know if I'm ready for summer. I don't know what I'm ready for. I'm ready for something different, I guess.
Yeah, I'm ready for the weather to not be weird. Although I don't really know what the weather's supposed to be like here, but we've had like super warm, like 60-degree days, and then like all of a sudden, like today and tomorrow, we have a weather advisory for like 30-degree wind chill and snow, and I'm like, why?
Whoa.
I know. I'm like, well, that's nice. And then it goes right back up into the 40s and like 60s. And I'm just like, cool.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of rain the last 2 days. I know a lot of the like East Coast got snow, like a lot of snow, but we just got mostly rain, and so it's been okay. It was really warm, like we hit 60s, which was pretty unprecedented for us this early.
Yeah.
But now we're back down to the 40s. So
yeah, man, wild.
Great reading weather.
Yeah, it is. It's really good, really nice, and nice to like go sit outside, I guess, and read a book.
Yes. I don't like to read outside very often, though. I have to be really in the mood for it.
I don't mind it. We have a nice porch, though, in our house. Nice. Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is we're on a fairly busy street, but outside of that, sitting on my porch in the afternoon is probably the highlight of most of my days.
Well, I feel like I can't hide this because we talked about this off the podcast, but I told you my favorite place to read is in the bathtub. And you hate reading it. You've never read in the bathtub, and it just blows my mind. So I feel like we just have to talk about it for a second since we're talking about where we read. Haley, you're missing out on such good reading. Reading in the tub is such a perfect thing to do. I just cannot fathom not reading in the tub.
I can't do it. It's just the fact that I'm like literally surrounded by water, and I have the same feelings about like reading in the pool. I just can't do it. It's just so I'm so afraid that I'm gonna either like drop my Kindle, drop my book. I won't even bring like my phone like in the bathtub. It like sits off to the side, and then like if I want to watch a movie or a show or whatever, I'll like put my laptop or whatever like on the counter of the bathroom so I don't. Yeah, no, I can't do it. It's just it's too close. I'm too afraid. Water ruins books and electronics. I don't trust myself enough.
I risk it, and I'll share this on the podcast. I did have a situation where I accidentally turned on the shower when I was reading a physical book, and it was a library book to make matters worse. And the pages did get a little bit wrinkly, and luckily the librarians didn't notice it. By the time it dried, it was kind of hard to tell, but I did feel pretty bad. And that's really the only time that I've had a problem There was one time when because I've been reading in the bath since I was like a kid, because we had a clawfoot tub growing up. I read all the time. I was in the bath all the time as a kid. And my sister, one time, she threw my book in because I would leave it in the laundry hamper
Mhm.
that was like by the bathtub in our house at home when we were growing up. And she threw the clothes in the washing machine, and my book was in the
Oh
laundry
no.
basket.
Oh
And so
no.
she ran my book through the washer, and that was pretty bad. But
Yeah.
other than that, that's the only time.
Yeah, that sounds awful. I would be mortified if that happened. I would be like, what in the world? Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about, I mean, and not to say that I don't read in the like bathroom. Like, like when I was younger, living at my parents' house, anyways, that was like the quiet place, like no one would come in and bother you. Like, no one would, so I would literally like sit on the floor of the bathroom and just like read for like hours. And my parents just were like, okay, whatever, like she was doing her thing. But like, yeah, I like literally, I don't know, there's something about the bathtub. But and I don't mind baths at all. Like, I think that they're so relaxing. You light some candles, you like put in some like bath bombs or whatever, some Epsom salt and what have you. You like get a nice drink and have a nice little time. But like, there's yeah, and I don't know, like, how do your hands not get like wet and then you like touch the book and then the book's getting wet? No, I can't do it. I just can't do it.
So they do. That's it. That is a problem. You do get the hands that have
Oh,
that. So yeah, it's
can't do it.
logistically not the best thing, but it's the most relaxing thing. My wife actually, she tells me not to take a bath. Like, if I could, I would take a bath every day and read every single day. And she has to like tell me, no, you can literally not take this many baths a week. You're going to
Yeah,
destroy the environment by how much water you're using.
and your skin, like your
And my
skin
skin.
probably,
Yeah.
yeah, like can't be
Yeah.
watering it too much. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It'll
No, I
dry out your
love it. I'm
skin.
probably going to do it today, actually, because my wife is, she's away for the evening doing something with her family. So I'm just by myself. And yeah, probably when we're done, I'm going to go into the bath.
Read and take a bath. That honestly
Yes.
sounds pretty good though.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Our bathtub doesn't have a little stopper in it. When we bought our house and we moved in, our bathtub didn't have like a little plug stopper,
Mhm.
whatever. And so like for the longest time we were just like taking showers because it's one of those like bath shower combination things. And finally, like recently, within the last few months, my husband got a something from like Amazon. I don't even know, but it was like a bath stopper thing for people who don't have bath stoppers when they move in, apparently.
Like those rubber, like
Yeah.
seals or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a little, I don't know, it's a little rubber thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was so, and I still have not taken a bath yet because of just haven't been able to. So I just stopped doing that.
Yeah. Nope. I feel bad because as a kid, I lived in a house we just had a clawfoot tub. So we actually only
Mhm.
took baths growing up. That's how
Oh,
we would
okay.
just bathe. And it was a clawfoot tub. It was amazing. I didn't realize how good it was until I moved out. And now I have just this typical
Hmm.
shower bath combo that every place has. And I'm so bummed that I
Yeah,
don't have a clawfoot tub to put myself into. But
those are so
oh well,
nice. Yeah.
they are. They really are. Yeah.
Well, speaking of reading, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, I am so excited to talk about this book. I just finished it 3 days ago
Hmm.
because the other book that I read, I'm going to talk about today, but um, I just finished my very first 2024 release,
Hmm.
first one of the year. It's called The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. And this book reminds me so much of the video game Red Dead Redemption 2 that
Yes.
I had to talk about this book on the podcast because we both love the game. And I just felt like I was in the Red Dead Redemption world reading this book. It's so good. I loved it. It's about this family, the Serrano family, that has a curse put on it, basically by God, I think, is kind of how it's introduced. And the story rotates between Antonio Serrano, who's in 1895, and he's a bandito, running from the law. He lives in Mexico, Dorado, Mexico, and he hears about this train that has a bunch of gold on it and a bunch of stuff. And he wants to rob the train and protect his family by giving them a bunch of money. And so he sets off for Houston with his brother, and his brother ends up dying, getting murdered by Texas Rangers. And he basically goes on a quest to avenge his brother's death. And this is not a spoiler, by the way. This is just all in the introduction of the book, so not a major spoiler. And then the other part of the story is 1964 with his descendant, and I believe it's his like great grandson or something, Jamie Serrano, who is an actor and singer in Mexico, who is playing in all of these Mexican movies about people like his grandfather. And he gets a book given to him by some random lady that turns out to be about his whole family, dating all the way back to very early times. And he finds out all the history of his family, and he decides he wants to narrate his grandfather's story about the bullet swallower, and kind of take it further. It's a fantastic book. I love it when books kind of go back and forth between narration, especially in time, like between 1895 and 1964. There's so much going on, so many different characters. And it was a really interesting read, and just such a fun. It was kind of like a Western because, of course, if you're a Mexican gunslinger, you're going to be living in the West, and it's set in Mexico and in Texas. But it was just a really interesting read, and I think anybody would get a kick out of it for sure.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I don't know why, but it was giving me like flashbacks to like Holes.
Yeah, it is like Holes. Yeah,
yeah,
because of the like family curse.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
no, it's totally like Holes. That's a very good analogy. Yeah,
That like
definitely like
totally,
Holes. Yeah,
which was such a good like. I think it was also a book, movie,
it was.
whatever, but
Yeah,
it was good.
yeah. I thought the movie was better, actually. I did read the
Really,
book, but I thought the movie was better. Yeah,
yeah. I've heard lots of like mixed feelings about like which one was better, but
yeah.
yeah, gosh, that sounds really interesting. And that's might be going on my TBR, my ever growing TBR.
Let's go. Yeah, really good. Good way to start off the 2024 releases for me, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Haley, what are you reading?
I'm actually currently in between books right now. Since I'm planning on a trip to Barnes and Noble this weekend, so I'm
Ooh.
planning on getting my hands on some more books. Not that I really need any more books because I was recently doing some photos for the Bookstagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this whole stack of books, like tangible books, real life books that are just sitting on my shelf, like waiting to be read, that I totally had forgotten that I had bought like a few months ago. Actually, I think it's been more than a few months. It's like been 6 months, but So I don't know. I'm in between books, but yeah.
Oh, that's great. I
Yeah.
love Barnes and Noble.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. And
How
sometimes I
far
like
do
to,
you live?
it's like a 20-30 minute drive or so.
Oh, okay.
20-30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that long. So
Good.
still have to go a little bit out of my way, but not too far.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we navigate into bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Do you have any bookkeeping you want to mention?
No, not
Okay,
currently.
great. I just have one because we've been talking about how we're on Apple Podcasts, and we are not currently on Apple Podcast. And the long story short is that there's an issue with the way the podcast gets uploaded on the Apple Podcast. It's different than everything else. And I thought we were on because my podcast hosting platform said that we were on, and we're not, based off of us being able to search. So
Yep.
I did put in a queue with customer service, and I have no idea when they're going to get back to me, but hopefully they can help me put it on. So, but for the time being, we're still on everything else. As far as I know,
Mhm.
Spotify's good. All the other podcast apps are good. So thanks for listening to those that do. And for those who are desperate to be on Apple Podcasts, I promise it'll be happening soon, but just hasn't happened yet,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
the way she goes, you know?
Frickin' Apple, you
I
know?
know.
Yeah,
Always.
always a pain in the butt. Well, today, this week, we're going to cover books for Black History Month because,
Hmm.
as we all know, February is Black History Month, and we
Yes.
want to make sure that we're talking about our favorite authors who are Black and persons of color, and we're excited to share books that we think you all will enjoy. We have both curated a list for you to look at and to listen to,
Mhm.
all by Black authors. And
Yes.
Haley, I think all of yours are romance. Is that true? Or
All except for one. There's only one that's not a romance. But yeah, they're
okay,
along the romance category.
great. And I have some that are. I also have one nonfiction, and then I have a few from different genres. So we'll be hitting a good amount of diversity as far as genre goes today, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Haley, do you want to get us started with your first book?
Yeah, I will get us started. So my first book that I have is a recent read, a fantastic read. It's called The Neighbor Favor. The Neighbor Favor, just to be clear. I love that it rhymes, but it's
Yeah.
by Kristina Forrest. And the description is a shy, bookish, and admittedly awkward Lily Green has always felt inadequate compared to the rest of her accomplished family, who strive for Black excellence. She dreams of becoming an editor of children's books, but has been frustratingly stuck in the nonfiction division for years without a promotion in sight. Lily finds escapism in her correspondences with her favorite fantasy author, and what begins as two lonely people connecting over email turns into a tentative friendship. And possibly something else Lily won't let herself entertain, until he ghosts her. Months later, still crushed but determined to take charge of her life, Lily seeks a date to her sister's wedding, and the perfect person to help her is Nick Brown, her charming, attractive new neighbor, whom she feels drawn to for unexplainable reasons. Little does she know that Nick is an author, her favorite fantasy author. Nick, who has his reasons for using a pen name and for pushing people away, soon realizes that the beautiful, quiet woman from down the hall is the same Lily he fell in love with over email months ago. Unwilling to complicate things even more between them, he agrees to set her up with someone else, though this simple favor between two neighbors is anything but, not when he can't get her off his mind. Yeah, this one. It was really good. Not a super long read, but really well written. It flowed pretty well. I'm trying to remember some of the key points that I really liked that stood out. I really like, so in the beginning of the very beginning of the book, without giving too many spoilers, but I just like the way it was formatted because I hadn't really seen this in a lot of books before. It's mainly just like rereading the like email correspondence between the two main characters, and I don't know what it was, but I just like it flowed really well, and it was a great introduction to their their two stories, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was really good, and there's other, so the main character has a couple of sisters, and honestly, I'm because I think there's a next book, if I remember correctly, for going over one of her sister's romance stories, but it sounds so interesting, and I'm planning on getting that book as well. But it's I'm excited to read her sister's perspective and her sister's romance in the next book. But
Yeah.
overall, really great book.
Yeah. I loved it. I also read it
Mhm.
less recently. I think I read it last year.
Mhm.
Great. Yeah. Also, great book. I just thought it was so fun. I love it when books are in books, like bookish books, I think are
Yeah.
always so fun. And I love the editor space and writer space, and so it was really fun. I did just try to find the second book because I saw it on a list,
Oh,
and
really?
it is called The Partner Plot,
Yes.
and I'm looking for a release date.
Yes. Because
It
I,
must take place in Vegas because the cover of it has the Vegas sign.
yes. And I
Uh,
do follow the author on Instagram. And
ooh,
yeah, and I do really love, kind of a tangent here, but I do really love following authors and seeing them like get excited about their books and all their releases and seeing like the cover art and all the stuff that they post is really cool. So
yeah. It actually comes out February 27th in
that's where
2 weeks. Like two
wow,
weeks,
okay.
it comes out.
That's so soon. Yay.
I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it as soon as it
Same.
comes out. Oh, I
Same.
can't wait. Yeah, it looks really fun. I'm really excited for this book, and I really loved Neighbor Favor, so I'm glad you talked about it because it's such a
Hmm.
good book.
Yes, for sure. Um, what's your first book, Cody?
Yeah, so my first book is also a recent read that is kind of similar to Neighbor Favor, but different in a couple ways. It's called Maame by Jessica George. And I'll read a little bit of the description just to give you a taste of what the book's like. Maame has many meanings in Twi, but in my case, it means woman. It's fair to say that Maddie's life in London is far from rewarding. With a mother who spends most of her time in Ghana, Maddie is the primary caretaker for her father, who suffers from advanced stage Parkinson's. At work, her boss is a nightmare, and Maddie is tired of always being the only black person in every meeting. When her mom returns from her last trip to Ghana, Maddie leaps at the chance to get out of the family home and finally start living. A self acknowledged late bloomer, she's ready to experience some important firsts. She finds a flat share, says yes to after work drinks, pushes for more recognition in her career, and throws herself into the bewildering world of internet dating. But it's not long before tragedy strikes, forcing Maddie to face the true nature of her unconventional family and the perils and rewards of putting her heart on the line.
Wow.
Listen, when I finished this book, I texted Haley immediately, and I was so excited to talk about this book. Uh, this was one of the best books I've read in a long time, and I know we talk about books we like every week, and I feel like every week I say, "Oh, I just love this book. It's so fun or interesting." This book made me cry multiple times. It was such an amazing read. I was so invested in Maddie's life, and you follow her as she moves out of her family's house for the first time, and she's the main caregiver for her dad, and so she's trying to get independence from that. She's only 25, has a lot of weight on her shoulders, and she moves into this flat with two strangers and just kind of gets to know who she is as an individual. And I was so invested in the story. Um, it was such a moving book. If you've ever experienced a loss in your life, I won't get spoilery, but if you've ever experienced a loss in your life, I think this book is a really great way to listen to a perspective about loss and grief. I don't think I've ever read a book that was so accurate on what it feels like to lose a loved one, and just an amazing book. It does have a little bit of a romance bend to it, but I'm not going to put it on the honey scale because some of the romance is not what I would say a great romance to put on the scale. Let's just say she's learning about romance for the first time, and she meets some people that maybe don't respect that. Let me just put it at that.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to put it on the honey scale because I think that's a little weird, but
Mhm.
there's a little bit of romance to it. And overall, I think it's just a great book, and I would totally recommend it for anybody who's interested, because it was an amazing book. I just loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Fantastic. I love when books are able to like evoke that sort of emotion and like just hit the nail on the head as far as like explaining or depicting um, the like real raw emotions that happen when real life things happen. It's
Yeah.
always refreshing.
Yeah, it was a great book. I loved it. Loved it. Haley, what's your second book?
Yeah. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but my second book that I want to talk about is it's called The AI Who Loved Me by Alyssa Cole. And it was a very short read. I looked up because I read this on my iBooks, and when I read on my iBooks, as I think I've probably mentioned in a couple of episodes before, it like extends the length of the book. But so the length is only 214 pages, so it's a quick, easy read. I would recommend it for anyone who maybe is in like a slump or maybe just like needs kind of like almost like a palate cleanser as far as like, when I read like either a lot of books or if I'm just looking for a book to, what's the word? Like, trying to think of the phrase, but just something when you're reading something so heavy or like you just get out of like a huge like series and then you're like, okay, like I don't want to read anything like too crazy. I don't want to, you know, uh, invest in another long series because I know sometimes I get like burned out from that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I seek out some of these shorter books, which are always incredible, well written, great books still in their own right. Um, but just have something a little bit nicer and a little easier to digest. Not to say that this book doesn't go over a couple of I wouldn't call them like heavier topics, but it is kind of along the sci-fi in the sci-fi realm. So anyways, I'll get into it. So it's The AI Who Loved Me by Alyssa Cole. The description reads, Trinity Jordan leads a quiet, normal life, working from home for The Hive, a multifunctional government research center, and recovering from the incident that sent her into a tailspin. But the life she's trying to rebuild is plagued by mishaps when Li Wei, her neighbor's super sexy and super strange nephew, moves in and turns things upside down. Li Wei's behavior is downright odd, and the attraction building between them is even more so. When an emergency pulls his aunt away from the apartment complex, Trinity decides to keep an eye on him, and slowly discovers that nothing is what it seems. For one thing, Li Wei isn't just the hot guy next door. He's the hot AI next door. In fact, he's so advanced that he blurs the line between man and machine. It's up to Trinity to help him achieve his objective of learning to be human. But danger is mounting as they figure out what he's capable. As they figure out whether he's capable of the most illogical human behavior of all, falling in love.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those books where it's like I almost like want it to be more. You know what I mean? Not like more as far as like what it's serving, but as far as like I wish it was longer so I could keep reading more. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. I thought it was like a really interesting take on like romance. Because like most typical romances don't involve an AI.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, and I don't want to get too spoilery because it's not a very long book, so I
Yeah.
don't want to give away too much, but it's really good.
Did you watch what is that show? It's like Star Trek, but it's created by Seth MacFarlane, the Family Guy creator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, what is that show called? The Orville. It's called The Orville.
No, but I've heard about it, but I have not.
It's really good, but there is an AI robot who decides to have a relationship with a human to
Okay.
get to know like that part of the human psyche better, and that reminded me of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was really good. I definitely recommend our listeners. I almost called them readers again.
Oh, they probably
I
are
don't know why.
readers. So
Yeah, the readers, the fellow readers or listeners.
the hive mind,
Yes, the hive
Yeah.
mind. I definitely recommend it, and you'll just have to get the book and listen or read or listen or however you um, enjoy your books for yourself.
Yeah. Does it have a hive or a honey scale? Does it have a honey scale?
Yeah, and I totally forgot to give a honey scale for the neighbor favor as well. So
Mm-hmm.
the I honestly, okay, so just going back to the neighbor favor, I would probably put it between like a beekeeper's passion and a hive hug, and I'd probably put the AI as well. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. So probably like a beekeeper's passion for both of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Still good, you know, good
Yeah.
romances, but not nothing too wild, and at least for me. At least for me, I'll say that. I'll put that caveat in there for me.
Everybody's honey scale is different, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. What's your next book?
Yeah, I think so. I will actually pair my next book that's also shorter with your book.
Okay.
And this is a fantasy read that has to do with a variety of things. It's called The Deep by Rivers Solomon. And it's a novella. It's probably I listened to it. I listened to the audiobook. I would say it's probably around 120 pages. I think it's like 4 hours long for the audio.
Okay.
And it is about these descendants of African slave women that are tossed overboard on their way from Africa to America, being captured, obviously. And the women who survive being pushed overboard off the boat have children and basically become mermaids in the ocean. And the whole plot of the novella is based off of a song called "The Deep" by Dovey Diggs from the group Clipping. And if you know Hamilton, you know Dovey Diggs was the person who played Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. And he's one of my favorite singers in the musical. He's a very good singer. And he actually narrates the audiobook. So if you love audiobooks and want to hear Dovey Diggs narrate a book, he's very good. And I'll just give the description here. Yetu holds the memories for her people, water-dwelling descendants of pregnant African slave women thrown overboard by slave owners, who live idyllic lives in the deep. Their past, too traumatic to be remembered regularly, is forgotten by everyone save one, the historian. This demanding role has been bestowed to Yetu. Yetu remembers for everyone, and the memories, painful and wonderful, traumatic and terrible, and miraculous, are destroying her. And so she flees to the surface, escaping the memories, the expectations, and the responsibilities, and discovers a world her people left behind long ago. Yetu will learn more than she ever expected to about her own past and about the future of her people. If they are all to survive, they'll need to reclaim the memories, reclaim their identity, and own who they really are. Inspired by a song produced by the rap group Clipping for this American Life episode, We Are in the Future, The Deep is vividly original and uniquely affecting. And I think that characterizes it really well. I read this book probably maybe 3 years ago, and I still think about it regularly. Just an amazing story. River Solomon is a fantastic sci-fi fantasy author. They publish amazing books that I've loved. Almost every one that they've written, I think I've read, and I've really enjoyed all of them. This is the one I chose just for today because I feel like it's really applicable for Black History Month, and it's just an amazing read. It's also short for those who maybe are looking for a shorter book, and I just can't highly recommend it enough. And I would say the audiobook is absolutely worth it to check out because, again, it's pretty short, so pretty relatively easy to listen to, and being narrated by somebody from Hamilton is pretty cool. So yeah, I highly recommend it for those interested.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I will be putting that on my TBR as well.
We just make our TBRs bigger every time.
Yeah, really,
We
truly.
just all bring each other's TBRs up.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great book. Haley, what's your third book?
Yeah, so my third book is, and I literally just finished this book. It is called The Davenports by Krystal Marquis. It's a historical fiction, and I something that our listeners wouldn't know about me, but I do, even though I do enjoy romance quite a bit, I also really love historical fiction thing. And this book was giving me such. I don't know if any of our listeners have ever seen the series Bridgerton or Queen Charlotte, but it was giving Bridgerton vibes as far as the historical fiction. We're in high society, that sort of thing. So the description is in 1910, the Davenports are one of the few black families of immense wealth and status in a changing United States. Their fortune made through the entrepreneurship of William Davenport, a formerly enslaved man who founded the Davenport Carriage Company years ago. Now, the Davenports live surrounded by servants, crystal chandeliers, and endless parties, finding their way and finding love, even where they're not supposed to. There is Olivia, the beautiful elder Davenport daughter, ready to do her duty by getting married, until she meets the charismatic civil rights leader Washington Dwight, and sparks fly. The younger daughter, Helen, is more interested in fixing cars than falling in love, unless it's with her sister's suitor. Amy Rose, the childhood friend turned maid to the Davenport sisters, dreams of opening her business and marrying the one man she could never be with, Olivia and Helen's brother, John. But Olivia's best friend, Ruby, also has her sights set on John Davenport, though she can't seem to keep his interest until family pressure has her scheming to win his heart, just as someone else wins hers. The first book in a breathless new series, The Davenports, offers a glimpse into a period of African American history often overlooked, while delivering a totally escapist, swoon-worthy read. Inspired by the real-life story of C.R. Patterson and his family, it's the tale of four determined and passionate young black women discovering the courage to steer their own path in love and life.
Oh,
Yeah, this and it's I believe it was like around 300, 400 pages, so it wasn't too big of a read, at least for me anyways. But it was so good, and there were so many parts in this book where I was like, like where you're like, no, like what are you doing? Like, where you're like screaming at the main character because
yes.
they're doing all the wrong things, and you're like, no, but and I really enjoyed this book as well because it reminded me of all of the unspoken history that I don't know about our listeners, but me personally, we weren't really taught at my school. I mean, you get your like normal history, US history lesson, events that transpire, but you're not really taught about the how certain states flourished. And I'm going to use this book as an example, but it's set in Chicago, which was so funny for me also reading it, living in Illinois. I was like, oh my gosh, like they're mentioning things in this book that I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that street. Oh my gosh, I know where that is. But so it's set in Chicago in the early 1900s, right at, the boom of the World's Fair and all of the going from the new technological boom of like lights and electricity and cars and all that other fun stuff. And something that I do want to mention real quick is at the end of the book, spoilers, but the author does kind of give a little bit more backstory on the history about the family that I'm assuming that the author wrote about based off this family. So it's set in Chicago. It's has a lot of like historical type events that are happening that and I'm no like history buff or anything, but there was a lot of stuff that is mentioned in the book that I was like, oh, I didn't know about that, or oh yeah, that was a thing back then that we weren't taught, or that I wasn't taught at least, until I was like well into college. I didn't find out about some of the things that are mentioned in this book that kind of jogged my memory. So yeah, it's a really good read. I definitely recommend it. And it also gives a little bit of insight into the history of that maybe not all of us realize or have known about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That sounds really good. I'm definitely going to read it. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, but not because I don't like it. It's because it just never, I don't know. I guess I don't hear about them very often. They're not on my
Mhm.
radar, but I love a good historical fiction novel, and I definitely want to read this one. I've never heard of it before, so I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. I definitely
Yeah.
recommend it. All right. What's your next book, Cody?
So my next book is actually also kind of historical fiction, but with a horror twist to it. Our books are paired really well. I've just figured out because we didn't really plan this to be this coordinated, but
Yeah.
we do kind of have overlapping themes, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
This is a book that I read just a couple weeks ago that I've been waiting to read for a long time. I've been on the holds list of the library forever. It's called The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And I'll just read the description. 12-year-old Robbie Stevens Jr. is sentenced to 6 months at the Gracetown School for Boys, a reformatory, for kicking the son of the largest landowner in town in defense of his older sister Gloria. So begins Robbie's journey further into the terrors of the Jim Crow South and the very real horror of the school they call the Reformatory. Robbie has a talent for seeing ghosts, or haints, but what was once a comfort to him after the loss of his mother has become a window to the truth of what happens at the Reformatory. Boys forced to work to remediate their so called crimes have gone missing, but the haints Robbie sees hint at worse things. Through his friends Redbone and Blue, Robbie is learning not just the rules, but how to survive. Meanwhile, Gloria is rallying every family member and connection in Florida to find a way to get Robbie out before it's too late. The Reformatory is a haunting work of historical fiction written as only American Book Award winning author Tananarive Due could, by piecing together the life of the relative her family never spoke of and bringing his tragedy and those so many others at the infamous Dozier School for Boys to the light in this riveting novel. Yeah, so this book was, like I said, one I've been really wanting to read for a long time. It was on the Goodreads best horror list last year. Totally is up my alley, and so many people that I know who read horror read this book and loved it, and I was just the same. It was an amazing book, and the fact that it's based off of a real place, that the authors, I forget what her connection was, but one of her relatives actually went to this school and
Oh,
died at the school,
wow.
and she learned about it when somebody was doing some sort of reporting on the school, and they told her about it, and so she decided to write a book based off of it. And it was such an amazing story, very much so about boys coming together, the unlawful justice system in the 1950s, the just all the things that happened wrong in that time period were brought up in this book. It's a very heavy book, I would say. There's a lot of content with it, but definitely is worth reading and is one that I think about very often. I'm definitely going to be checking out the other books written by this author because she's written quite a few, I guess, and I have not read any before this one, and I cannot wait to read more of her work because it was such a good book. And yeah, just really, really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And it's so funny. I don't know why, but the word haints, literally, I don't think I've ever seen that word, but it seems familiar. It sounds familiar. Maybe
I
I've like,
kept, because I was reading it on my ebook, and when I first saw it, I thought they meant haunt,
yeah,
like a haunt, but no, it's
yeah,
haint. And
yeah,
I don't know where the word comes from. I meant to look it up and never did, but
yeah.
yeah, it's haint.
That,
It's just such a cool word.
yeah, I might have to look that up because it
Yeah.
looks so familiar. But yeah, it sounds like a really good story, and that's kind of cool. Well, not I'm not gonna say cool that it was based off a true story, but it's interesting that it was based off a true story. And wow, what a story, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine. Could not imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Haley, what is your next book?
Yeah. So my next book is, I believe, my last book that I had, and it's not a fiction book. It's a little bit, I wouldn't call it like a strenuous read, but it's definitely got a lot of heavy content. It's got a lot of like statistics and that sort of thing. Um, and I believe I've mentioned it at least once before in one of our previous episodes. But I believe that this is probably uh, one of the more important books that someone who maybe isn't Black or POC should read, in my opinion. It talks a lot about race and the prison industrial complex. But it's The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And I believe this year there's a 10th edition coming out, or it's like special 10th edition. I don't know, but I saw it when I was trying to find the description for this book. I believe I saw that there was like a special 10th edition coming out this year. But so the description is, as the United States celebrates the nation's triumph over race with the election of Barack Obama, the majority of young Black men in major American cities are locked behind bars or have been labeled felons for life. Although Jim Crow laws have been wiped off the books, an astounding percentage of the African American community remains trapped in a subordinate status, much like their grandparents before them. In this incisive critique, former litigator turned legal scholar Michelle Alexander provocatively argues that we have not ended racial caste in America. We have simply redesigned it. Alexander shows that by targeting Black men and decimating communities of color, the U.S. criminal justice system functions as a contemporary system of racial control, even as it formally adheres to the principle of colorblindness. The New Jim Crow challenges the civil rights community and all of us to place mass incarceration at the forefront of a new movement for racial justice in America. Yeah, lots of big words in that one. Sorry. But if there's one book that I can recommend to anybody that maybe wants to learn more, because I think that that's something that's really important to do regardless of, whatever, is learning more, I would recommend this book. It's, like I said, it's not an easy read, that's for sure, but it's definitely an important one to read. And I will mention that it is a little older. I don't remember what year it was published in, but I want to say it was like mid to early 2000s. And it goes over topics that maybe a lot of people don't realize are happening still. Hence the whole New Jim Crow aspect.
Right.
It was published in 2010.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
10 years, roughly.
Yeah, a little bit more than 10.
I haven't read it. This is one that I've wanted to read, and it's just never made it to my, nightstand. Mm-hmm. So I should read it for sure, because it sounds right up my alley. I just I didn't know how bad the prison system was until I know I've read a few other books that are kind of in the space, and there was a documentary that came out a couple of years ago about the prison system. It's amazing how corrupt it is.
Yeah.
And not designed for what it's supposed to be, like reforming people to be productive in society. It doesn't do that at all for the most part.
Yeah, no, it's essentially, not to be crass, but it's essentially a new form of slavery within the U.S. A lot of they're predatory. They obviously, as I'm sure maybe some of our listeners know, and maybe some of them don't, but our legal system is fairly unjust.
Yeah.
As far as crimes and the disproportionality of people who become imprisoned based off of silly charges that aren't really, I don't know, I'm not going to get too political, but it's but maybe I should, I don't know, but I definitely think it's a good book. I think it's worth reading. It's definitely a dipping the toes in the water of dismantling our preconceived knowledge. Or, maybe learning a little bit more about what you already know. I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's totally worth checking out. I'm definitely going to check it out. Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have one more book for you?
Yeah, I got one
Okay.
more.
Yeah.
The one that I wanted to mention too is also related to Haley's book. And the book is called Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. And it also is about the prison system. So it's very similar to the new Jim Crow. This is a fiction book, it's a sci fi kind of dystopian fiction book. And it is about the prison system that has been taken so far into its limits that instead of reforming people to take them out, it keeps people in prison, and it gives this sort of competition to where if you're in prison for, I believe if you're in prison for life, they let you join into this program where you can fight other prisoners to the
Mm-hmm.
death. And if you survive through so many matches, you leave prison, basically. So it's like a competition system, very much like the Colosseum, like what am I, like Roman Colosseum
Mm-hmm.
style fighting. And it's a very interesting book, one of my favorite books of last year. And I have the description here for you. Two top women gladiators fight for their freedom within a depraved private prison system not so far removed from America's own. Loretta Thruar and Hamara Hurricane Stacker are the stars of Chain Gang All Stars, the cornerstone of CAPE, or Criminal Action Penal Entertainment, a highly popular, highly controversial, profit raising program in America's increasingly dominant private prison industry. It's the return of the gladiators, and prisoners are competing for the ultimate prize, their freedom. In CAPE, prisoners travel as links in chain gangs, competing in death matches for packed arenas with righteous protesters at the gates. Thruar and Stax, both teammates and lovers, are the fan favorites. And if all goes well, Thruar will be free in just a few matches, a fact she carries as heavily as her lethal hammer. As she prepares to leave her fellow Links, she considers how she might help preserve their humanity in defiance of these so-called games. But Cape's corporate owners will stop at nothing to protect their status quo, and the obstacles they lay in Thruar's path have devastating consequences. Moving from the links in the field to the protesters to the Cape employees and beyond, Chain Gang All Stars is a kaleidoscopic, excoriating look at the American prison system's unholy alliance of systemic racism, unchecked capitalism, and mass incarceration, and a clear-eyed reckoning with what freedom in this country really means. Um, if you've read New Jim Crow, or if you're in that space, I think Chain Gang All Stars is a real good example of what it could be like in the future if things continue the way they do. It's a really amazing read. Um, in the sci-fi dystopian world, very much not out of the scope of realism for what could potentially be happening, and it's a good commentary on the prison system that complements the nonfiction book that Haley mentioned. Really, that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's just a great read. I really liked it. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good book to follow along with that.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, interesting that it's two top women gladiators. That's interesting.
Actually, I think all of the main characters are women in the
Huh.
book. Yeah,
Well,
which is really nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'll also probably be putting that on my TBR.
Yeah, all your books are going on my TBR too, so it works out well.
Yeah, we're just swapping books at this point.
Yeah. It's nice how well our books paired. We did not plan it.
Yeah.
We didn't plan it that way for those listening, thinking that maybe we did, but they paired really well together.
They really did. That's so funny. Did you have one more book?
I do have one that I want to mention.
Okay.
That is, I won't read the description for it because it's actually a collection of essays. It's called 400 Souls by Ibram X. Kendi and Keisha and Blain. They're actually the editors for the essay collection, and it's written by, I think, 80 different authors. It's quite a bit of authors, and it's a collection of essays, and each essay is dedicated to a time period starting in 1619, the year before the arrival of the Mayflower, where slaves were thought to be first captured and brought back to America. Each essay is representative of a 5-year span. So the first essay is 1619 to 1624, and then it continues on up to 2019.
Oh, wow.
And it's an absolutely amazing collection of work. There are so many good authors in this essay collection that convey really compelling stories. They're all nonfiction, but different in the way they talk about their 5-year span. Like I said, straight from 1619 up to end of slavery, up to the civil rights movement, and up to 2019. It's just a really amazing collection of work. And I would also recommend listening to it on the audiobook, especially if you have the time. If you can listen to one essay a day, it would take you a long time to read the book, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see the different perspectives and just how things changed a lot, but also did not change a lot for people of color or Black individuals in America. And yeah, I would just absolutely recommend it. Ibram X. Kendi is one of my favorite authors, especially in the nonfiction space. He's written How to Be an Anti-Racist and a few other books, and he's just a really compelling author, and I love his work. And a lot of other authors in this book were great too. So I'd recommend checking it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds. And how many stories did you say it was?
I think 80
Oh, wow.
it ends up
Okay.
being. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a pretty big book.
Yeah.
I forget. I listened to it on audio. I forget how long it was, but it was pretty long.
Wow. That sounds really interesting, though. And kind of, I really like when books and what have you uh, kind of give people the opportunity to like share their own walks of life, I guess, their own
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I actually read this. It came out, I think, in 2020,
Okay.
and I think I read it the year it came out. I should reread it again because it's been a few years. And yeah, I think about this book a lot, actually. And I like to revisit books that stay on my brain, like this one. And I should buy it, I think, because I checked it out at the library. And this is definitely a book, I think, it's hard to read it in the time frame of a library book, like, a month or 3 weeks,
Right.
just because there's so much to it. But yeah, it's really good. I highly recommend.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. Definitely worth investing in.
Yeah. And for our hive mind, our listeners out there, if you have books to celebrate Black History Month that you want to share, feel free to do so. We have an Instagram. Haley, do you remember our Instagram? Because I didn't put it in the show.
Yes. It's just the Books and the Bees pod. All one word, no like what's the word, symbols or spaces. Books and the Bees pod. All one word.
There you go. Yeah, please post on Instagram what books you're reading for Black History Month. I know we're a little bit late to the game because we didn't really coordinate how we were going to do February. We're still new to the podcast game, but we're here to rep. You could also email us at booksandbees. Sorry, you can email us at booksandbeespod@gmail.com. Feel free to send us an email there. We'd love to get some emails from our listeners. And I think we also both pulled aside some Black Bookstagram, book talkers, book specialists. Do you want to mention yours, Haley?
Yeah. So two that I follow that one of them does, I think they just do all reviews of any books. But I really like the way that they, the like style in which they review the books. It's Eden Victoria. And I suppose we could probably put those in the show notes just so people know, how to search for that person. Definitely. And then the second TikToker, book talk person that I would like to highlight is all one word, she be reading them books. Again, that'll be in the show notes. This particular individual does like so many book reviews. Oh my goodness. Like and like across the board, all different like fantasy and small authors, big authors, people we might know, people we may have never heard of. Um, they're yeah, just like a plethora of book recommendations, and most of them are POC Black authors that they recommend. And then and one of the books that that I have on my TBR that I guess I should probably mention, that I actually got from this individual that I just haven't read yet, and it's called Blood Debts, by
Mm.
Terry J. Benton Walker, and it looks really good. I haven't yet started it yet, just because I've been reading other books, but it's on my TBR, on my going to read like within the next week or two TBR. So definitely recommend checking them out, supporting them, uplifting and that sort of thing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. They look fantastic. I love to get new book recommendations, especially
Mm-hmm.
on TikTok, Book Talk, because that's such a hot area right now for book recs.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I also have a couple that I found. Both of mine are on Instagram, Bookstagram, but one of them also has a Book Talk, a TikTok. And the first one is Nena Otaluga, whose Instagram handle is at SCS Reads. And she primarily reads contemporary fiction, romance, lit fic, things like that. And I think she'd be really interesting for a lot of our listeners, a lot of the members of the Hive Mind. She actually did highlight The Partner Plot, which is the new Kristina Forrest book that we mentioned earlier. She's excited to read that book. And I've been following her for quite a while. She's got a really interesting blog, and I love the way she lays out her Instagram page. She has a lot of goals that she talks about. She's very open with, reading life and how she likes to read and things like that. And I think she's just a really good person to follow and give a lot of great book recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I pulled out is Sista Sci-Fi, Sistah Sci-Fi. And they're actually a bookstore by the same name. And I forget where the bookstore is located, but they have a huge online presence, both on Instagram and TikTok. And I have gotten so many book recommendations from them that I just love it when they pull up, because they only recommend and sell sci-fi fantasy books from Black authors, particularly Black women authors. And I've gotten so many good recommendations from their social media pages that I just had to give them a shout out, because I've been following them for a couple of years, and I just love everything they're putting out because they're so helpful. And I also wanted to mention too, because I like to browse Goodreads,
Mm-hmm.
and Goodreads had a really great clip, or not clip, but pull of 100 new works of fiction by Black authors that I think is worth checking out. We'll put it in the show notes as well. Some of the books we mentioned were on this. I think 2 of mine, and I think 2 of yours, Haley,
Oh, okay.
were on this list. And so it's really good to check out. There's so many great books on there that obviously we don't have time to talk about. So go check that out if you're looking for more recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. And so I found my books through the Read More section on Apple Books, iBooks, whatever you want to call it. And that is one thing that I do like about, I don't know if the Kindle does it, just because I haven't had the Kindle for very long, but I know that like my reading app on my iPhone does, during certain months, they'll do highlight authors and books that kind of go along with whatever month they're celebrating. I'm pretty sure they've done like LGBTQIA plus book recs, that sort of thing. So they did have a Black History Month section. So, I mean, if anyone's looking to maybe support, buy, read books from Black authors, I think it's really good to browse sections like that, you might find something that you really enjoy and really like. I know that's how I found the Davenports book, was through the app. So, and they don't just have like romance and stuff; they have nonfiction, all sorts of stuff. So,
Yay.
something for everyone.
Yeah. Haley, is there anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, just real quick. I did look at the statistics of authors. This comes from bookriot.com, and it's an article called The State of Diversity in the Publishing Industry. And I think it's important to just quickly highlight how it says that a survey in 2019 revealed that 76% of publishing is still white. This includes publishing staff, review journal staff, literary agents. They initially conducted a survey in 2015, and then in 2019, it concluded that the field is just as white today as it was 4 years ago. The survey also showed that 74% of people in publishing are cis women but that about 38% of executives and board members are cis men, which indicates that men continue to rise to positions of power more quickly than women. Further findings show 81% are straight and 89% are non-disabled. But one of the most concerning results of the 2019 Diversity Baseline Survey is the conclusion that editorial is even more white than before, despite the efforts of publishers to provoke change. So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit, and
Wow.
I think it's more important than ever to uplift and make room and make space for people in general that maybe aren't represented as much as they should be. So
Yeah. Wow. Those numbers are appalling, I think I'd say.
yeah.
I mean, I would not, I would have expected it to be majority white maybe, but to have it be such a high percentage and have it to be worse than it was 4 years ago, I think is just really sad. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And I think we've shown with the podcast, and I think we're both transparent. We're both not members of the Black community. We're both white individuals, and so, we're not here to take the space of Black individuals and talk about what everybody should be reading for Black History Month because we're from that perspective. But I think it's important to look at what you're reading and to say, am I only reading white authors? Am I only reading male authors? Am I only reading ableist authors?
Yeah.
And what should I do to fix that? And it's good to be an aware reader because there's so many good books out there from so many different walks of life. Like we talked about, we had 8 different books that we both mentioned, all of which had their own interesting lens to it and were from different genres. So no matter what genre you read, no matter what kind of books you like, there are authors out there that are unique in their own perspective and should be read.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's great, Haley. Thanks for pulling those stats. Those are
of course.
Yeah. Hopefully they get fixed.
Yes. Hopefully we can do something about it to kind of
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I do, before we wrap up, always want to mention that just in case you missed it, we have an email. It's booksandbeespod@gmail.com. Our Instagram is booksandthebeespod. That Haley works so hard to push all the content out. So it's popping over on the Instagram world. So thank you, Haley, for doing that.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to Rendezvous for our song, The American Indie, because I love the song and it's such a great song for our podcast that I'm so excited we get to use it every week. So go and follow them on Spotify. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I do post their link to Spotify in the show notes too. So feel free to go onto their Spotify and listen to their other music because it's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this literary journey as much as we did. If you're buzzing with excitement, don't forget to subscribe, email us, and leave a Hive 5 worthy review on your podcast listening app. Until next time, happy reading, and may your shelves be filled with tales as enchanting as a blooming garden. Keep the buzz alive, and we'll catch you in the next chapter. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.